I remember the first time I tried to build a pollinator paradise. I went to a big box nursery and bought everything that looked bright and colorful. I spent nearly $300 on what the labels called bee-friendly flowers. A week later, my garden looked like a magazine cover, but there was one massive problem. Not a single bee visited. No butterflies stopped by. I had built a beautiful, expensive graveyard for my local ecosystem. The problem wasn't my green thumb, it was the showcase plants I had bought, sterile hybrids designed for shelf life, not for life in the wild. Today, I'm going to make sure you don't repeat that mistake. I'm going to show you how to choose 4 native perennials that will attract 5 species of bees and 3 types of butterflies to your yard in just 14 days. Here is my promise to you. If you follow the steps in this guide, you will have a buzzing, colorful garden for at least 6 months of the year without ever having to replant. We are going to swap those sensitive, high-maintenance hybrids for local champions that actually work. But before we dig in, you need to remember the no-secret gardening signature rule, what I call the Pollinator Law. Flower for fuel, leaf for life, and soil for safety. If you don't provide all 3, they won't stay. Let's start with a practical proof to see if your garden is even ready for these guests. This is the midday soil test. Go out to your intended garden bed at exactly noon. Dig a small hole about 4 inches deep. If the soil at that depth feels like a hot oven, your plants will suffer, even if you give them plenty of water. A pollinator garden needs protected soil. If your soil is scorching, the leaf suffers and the nectar dries up. If it feels cool to the touch, you're ready to plant. Another quick test is the leaf firmness test on your existing plants. If you squeeze a leaf and it feels like thin paper, your humidity is too low for the most sensitive butterflies. We need to fix the environment before we bring in the stars of the show. The first plant we need to talk about is the legendary purple coneflower, or Echinacea purpurea. Now wait, don't just run out and buy any pink flower. The ones you see in supermarket displays are often double-flowered varieties. They look like pom-poms. These are a trap. The extra petals actually block the bees from reaching the nectar. You want the simple native variety where the center is prominent and accessible. Usually, Echinacea is the backbone of a U.S. garden because it is incredibly tough. It handles the summer heat and gives you blooms for months. In most backyards, this plant is known for its deep taproot, which means once it's established, it's a drought warrior. But here is the secret. The showcase version of this plant often dies in the first winter because it was forced to bloom in a small pot with heavy fertilizers. When you bring it home, it goes into shock. To avoid this, look for young plants that aren't blooming yet. They might look boring now, but they will be the kings of your garden next season. If you are in a scenario where you have full sun all day, the coneflower is your best friend. If you have partial shade, we might need to look at our next option. For those of you in apartments or with only a small pot, don't worry. The decision map shows that you can still grow these if the pot is deep enough to accommodate that long taproot. Just remember, no standing water. These plants hate wet feet. Always ensure the pot is drained and there is no pooled water in the saucer, or the roots will rot before the first butterfly even arrives. Now, why does the coneflower work so well? It's about the landing pad. Butterflies are heavy. They need a sturdy place to sit while they drink. The wide, flat petals of the native coneflower are like a private airport for monarchs and swallowtails. But the nectar is only half the story. To truly follow the pollinator law, we need to talk about the leaf for life part of the equation, and that brings us to a plant that many people mistakenly pull out as a weed. I'm talking about milkweed. Without it, some of our most beautiful guests simply cannot survive. But there is a hidden danger in how most people plant milkweed that can actually hurt the butterflies they are trying to save. I lost an entire season of caterpillars because I didn't know this one simple rule about the invisible flower, and I'll tell you exactly what it is in the next part. The invisible flower I mentioned isn't actually a flower at all. It's the leaf. For a monarch butterfly, the leaf of the milkweed plant is the only thing that matters. It's where they lay their eggs, and it's the only thing their caterpillars can eat. If you only provide nectar-rich flowers but no host leaves, you're just running a gas station for butterflies. They'll stop to fuel up, but they won't stay to start a family. This is the leaf for life part of our pollinator law. Flower for fuel, leaf for life, and soil for safety. If we want a true sanctuary, we have to provide the nursery. However, there is a trap waiting for you at the garden center. Most stores sell tropical milkweed because it has stunning orange and red flowers that stay pretty all summer. But in many parts of the US, this plant is a disaster. It doesn't die back in the winter like our native species do, which can trick butterflies into staying too long or harbor a parasite that weakens them. Usually, I tell my friends to look for butterfly weed or swamp milkweed. Don't let the name swamp scare you. It tends to grow beautifully in most backyards as long as the soil isn't bone dry. Let's do a quick practical proof to see if your milkweed is actually happy. This is the 3-finger moisture test. Most people kill their native perennials by overwatering or underwatering because they only look at the surface. Push 3 fingers into the soil around your plant, about 2 inches deep. If your fingers come out muddy, you are risking root rot, and remember, no standing water. If the soil is dry and crumbly at that depth, your milkweed is stressed. A stressed plant produces less sap, and that sap is the lifeblood of the caterpillars. If the soil is scorching, the leaf suffers, and the caterpillars won't have the nutrients they need to grow. Now, if you're looking at your yard and thinking, I don't have much space, let's look at our mini decision map. If you are in a small backyard or even working with large pots on a patio, your best bet is bee balm or monarda. This is a nectar powerhouse. It looks like a firework exploded in a bottle of red or purple ink. Bees and hummingbirds absolutely lose their minds over it. But here is the showcase error that tricks many beginners. People buy the most beautiful, tall bee balm they can find, only to see it covered in a white, dusty powder 2 weeks later. That's powdery mildew. It happens because of poor airflow. In most backyards, you want to look for mildew-resistant native cultivars. They might not be the tallest ones on the shelf, but they will stay green and healthy while the showcase varieties turn gray and die. If you are in an apartment scenario, bee balm can work in a pot, but you must be the protector of the roots. Because pots heat up faster than the ground, that midday soil test from earlier is even more critical. If you feel that heat, you need to mulch the top of the pot with some dried leaves or straw. This is the soil for safety part of the rule. You are creating a shelter for the microbes in the soil that keep the plant strong enough to produce all that nectar. I've spent years testing these combinations, and I've put everything I've learned about timing and soil prep into the guide No Secret Gardening. It's designed to help you skip the expensive trial and error phase that I went through. I want you to spend your weekends watching butterflies, not hauling dead plants to the trash. If you want a garden that feels like a living, breathing ecosystem, you have to stop thinking like a decorator and start thinking like a host. But even with the right plants, there is one master error that can wipe out your entire pollinator population in a single afternoon. It's a mistake I see people make even when they have the best intentions. They buy the native plants, they fix the soil, and then they do this one thing that turns their paradise into a danger zone. It's the one thing the seller never warns you about, and if you don't catch it, your bees will disappear overnight. I'll show you how to spot this trap and how to fix it in the next part. The master error that ruins everything is something you usually can't even see. It's the invisible poison. Many gardeners go to the store, see a beautiful native perennial labeled pollinator friendly, and bring it home. But here is what the seller doesn't tell you. Many of those plants have been pre-treated with systemic pesticides called neonicotinoids. These chemicals live inside the plant's tissue. When a bee drinks the nectar or a caterpillar eats the leaf, they are essentially eating poison. This is why your showcase plants might look perfect, but stay lonely. To fix this, always ask your local nursery if their plants are neonic-free. In most backyards, a plant that has a few small holes in the leaves is actually a better sign than a plant that looks plastic perfect. It means the ecosystem is actually working. Before we wrap up, I have to mention one more champion for the late summer gap, the black-eyed Susan or Rudbeckia hirta. While the coneflower starts the show, the black-eyed Susan keeps it going when the heat gets intense. It's a survival specialist. But remember our rule: if the soil is scorching, the leaf suffers even with water. Even the toughest native plants need that soil for safety. I always tell people to look at the base of their plants. If you see bare, cracked dirt, you are missing the shelter. Cover that soil with a thin layer of wood chips or even fallen leaves. No shelter in the soil, no drama in the leaf. Now let's look at our final decision map to help you place these perennials correctly based on your specific environment. If you have a spot with full sun all day and well-drained soil, go with a combination of purple coneflower and black-eyed Susans. This is your high-energy nectar hub. If you are in a scenario with partial shade or soil that stays a bit damp, your best friend is the swamp milkweed and bee balm. They don't mind the extra moisture and the light dappled sun. For those of you in an apartment or with a small backyard using pots, focus on one deep container for a single native perennial rather than 5 small pots. A larger volume of soil stays cooler and holds moisture longer, protecting the roots from that midday heat. How do you know if all this effort is actually working? Here is your signs it's working checklist for the next 7 to 14 days. First, look for the host sign. If you see small, crescent-shaped holes or chewed edges on your milkweed leaves, don't panic. Celebrate! That is a sign that a mother butterfly chose your garden as a nursery. Second, look for sleepy bees. In a safe, pesticide-free garden, you will often find native bees resting on the flowers in the early morning or late evening. They feel secure enough to sleep there. Third, perform the sprout test. If you see tiny green shoots popping up around the base of your perennials next spring, it means they have successfully established their roots and are ready to give you a harvest of color for another 90 days. Everything I do here at No Secret Gardening is about protecting you from the frustration of a garden that looks good but feels dead. I want you to have a space that is a sanctuary for you and the nature around you. If you found this helpful and want to stop wasting money on showcase plants that don't deliver, make sure to check out the Guide No Secret Gardening. It's my way of handing over all the shortcuts I wish I had when I started. If you're ready to transform your yard into a buzzing paradise, hit that subscribe button and join our community. I'd love to know in the comments, which state are you gardening in and which pollinator are you most excited to see this year? Your stories help all of us grow better together. Share this video with a friend who is tired of seeing their flowers wilt. Let's make every backyard a safe haven. Grow with ease, smarts, and love. See you next time.